Inside Huntsville with Brenda Martin, a conversation with department heads at City Hall on streets, ball fields, public safety, and more. And also with our community partners that add economic security, support education, and enhance the city's quality of life.
Hello, I'm Brenda Martin for Inside Huntsville. Today I have two special guests that will speak about an upcoming celebration honoring our country's heroic military men and women. On September 11th, our world changed in an instant. We were handed a stunning tragedy which still echoes in our lives today. On September 12th, 2015, there will be an honor walk to remember, heal, and celebrate, and show our appreciation to our military, the first responders and their families at the Space and Rocket Center between 2 and 5 o'clock. And here to talk more about this upcoming celebration is the Reverend Kerry Joffrion, President and CEO of Turning Point Consultants, and veteran Joshua Williams, a Huntsville native who will share his incredible story with us. Welcome to each and every one of you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brenda. It's our pleasure.
May I call you Kerry?
Yes, please.
Okay, Kerry, tell us more about the Honor Walk.
Well, the Honor Walk, this is our second annual celebration of 9/11, and we are very excited about having military first responders and their families to come and be honored at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Last year we had 1,300 plus underneath the Pathfinder space shuttle. We had no idea we would have that kind of a turnout for our first annual event.
Okay.
And so it looks like it's proving to be a tradition for Huntsville.
That's great. Well, now who else is sponsoring this event?
Well, U.S. Space and Rocket Center is our host site and wonderful sponsor who is allowing free admission with pre-registration for the event. Okay. And they are providing the on-site Honor Walk, which is underneath the Pathfinder, the Space Shuttle Pathfinder. It's an amazing setting. The other sponsors are Chimera Corporation, Lisa Williams, Turning Point Consultants, which is my company, Still Serving Veterans, and NMR Consulting Firm, federal contractors.
Okay, great. Thank you. You know, Huntsville is known as the city of innovations. Why is this innovative model and unusual manner of honoring helpful to the Rocket City?
Well, the thing that's interesting about it is it's an ancient technology. We use the labyrinth as the honor walk, which is an ancient symbol of healing that's known across all continents and all peoples. And we use the honor walk because it has three movements of healing, which is release, receive, and return. And in the movement of that, people can let go of their toxicity and the burdens they're carrying, the stones that weigh them down, and offer themselves and the people around them through the community the kind of healing that's needed for PTSD, moral injury, and all of the incredible burden that our military and first responders carry. And you know they carry a disproportionate amount of the weight for the events of 9/11 and continue to. And we were absolutely certain that this form, and we've seen over time, will help with suicide prevention and the burden that disproportionately is carried by our first responders and military and their families.
When you talk about first responders, what does that mean?
Well, lovely that you would ask, because oftentimes we honor the military, but we don't always honor veterans, and we don't always honor first responders. Those are the people who at 3 a.m. are there for us when the fires hit our homes. Those are the people who are there who are on first call, police officers, firemen, HIMSI, ambulance responders, those who offer their lives regularly and put themselves in harm's way for our own freedom. And so really there's no greater love that someone can have than to lay down their life for a friend. And these are the people who do it regularly and sometimes are overlooked. And they're frontline people, they're first responders. And their families are also on the front line because they're giving their loved one up for our benefit every time they take that call.
Thanks for sharing that, yes. Joshua Williams, you are a native.
I sure am. I was born and raised here on Montesano Mountain.
On Montesano Mountain, where we are here this morning today. Great. Now, you were in the military. Tell us when and where.
I served in the 1st Infantry Division out of Fort Riley, Kansas. I was in there for about 5 years, which 3 of them were in Iraq.
Okay, so you're a combat veteran.
Yes, ma'am. I served in the infantry battalion. It was 128 Infantry Regiment. and that was we were the first brigade in the Surge of Baghdad in 2007. We served there for 15 months, and then we went back in 2009 at the beginning of the drawdown in MND North.
Well, you know, what's interesting is the fact that you graduated from Samford University with honors, and you enlisted in the infantry,
Yes, ma'am.
not as an officer, which you could have done so. Talk to us about that.
Well, coming from the great family that I came from, and I saw what we were asking of our young men and women. And even though I have a privileged upbringing and was able to go to university like Samford, I felt like that I couldn't ask of other men and women to do for me what I wasn't willing to do for myself. So I did graduate, and I also felt that it's a little disproportionate to think that someone that has a college degree and that I'm decent at physics can lead troops in combat. So I enlisted to understand what it meant to serve before I decided I was going to figure out if I knew what it meant to lead.
And so how long were you there? Tell us about your story.
So I was in our first tour. I came out of college. About 2 weeks after that, I was in basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia. Spent a wonderful 9 weeks there, and was immediately sent to Fort Riley, Kansas after airborne school. When I got there, I found out my unit was deploying in 2 months, and we were going to be the first brigade in the Baghdad troop surge, which is where we increased the troop strength by 20,000 in the streets of Baghdad. And we essentially lived in the neighborhood where the Civil War was going on at the time. It was a very difficult time for my friends and I, and I don't think that any training or any prep that we could have had physically or mentally could have prepared us for what we would have seen or had to face in those streets. And that's part of why I'm here today, is because those wounds that were carried there, not just the physical wounds, but the ones that you can't see, are the ones that are the most hard, the most difficult to address.
And how do you deal with that, Joshua?
Unfortunately, most of our young men and women that come home, and I do say young because I went in after college, and the majority of we call them battle buddies, were 18 years old, right out of high school. And so even with my extra 4 years of life, I could only imagine, how they had to handle it. The most difficult thing is trying to return home, and trying to understand that the wounds that you have are wounds. We are ingrained with this idea that we're invincible, that we are not allowed to show weakness, or that we're not allowed to allow the public to see that we're fallible. And that's the most difficult thing, is for us to return and say, okay, here's the things that have happened. I don't understand. And how can I deal with those, with myself, but also with my family and with my community?
So how did you come out so valiantly?
Oh, goodness gracious, I didn't.
Okay.
It was a very long road home for me. I returned from coming back from my tours in Baghdad or my tours in Iraq. And it was quite different, because my friends that were in college and the people that I knew back home, they saw me as the same person, but I didn't recognize myself in front of the mirror. I knew I was something different, and it was a little scary, a little darker. And the most difficult thing was for me to rectify that within myself. I felt a deep toxicity. I was afraid to touch people or to be near people, and I had very little physical wounds. And I just thought that if I got close to someone, people that I loved, that toxicity would flood onto them. And so it kind of becomes a self-isolationist approach. And you really resign yourself to live in a state of not despair, but just loneliness, because you don't want that to flood onto the people around you.
So how did you cope?
Honestly, until I met Reverend Kerry, I wasn't coping very well. Most people wouldn't know, but she allowed me to see through the honor walk and through Labyrinth that within us contains the ability to see a way out. It allows you to take in that space and in that area inside the labyrinth is a sacred space, and it's a space where you have the permission to release those burdens. And I felt as if I was carrying a weight, and I didn't think that the weight of what I carried from Baghdad I couldn't put it down because it would be dishonor to those that I carried. And my first experience with the labyrinth was just amazing. And when I made it to the center and I felt spontaneously compelled to release that weight, figuratively and physically with a stone in my hand, it's as if a weight lifted off of my shoulders and I was able to breathe again and take a deep breath and really see myself. And combined with that, how Reverend Kerry and the people that were there with me, that weight transferred to them. And they told me as I left, they said, "We will witness your life." And since then, I've been, every opportunity I've received to share that with my friends and family, I have.
I was going to say, are you reaching out to other people, other veterans, other comrades, so to speak, about your experience and what this means?
Absolutely. I've done different labyrinths with friends, alone with Kerry. I've reached out to them, those of my friends that are still suffering. There's so many people just in this city alone, men and women who are carrying those burdens, and not just our service members, but their families, that feel like that there's no way for them to unburden themselves. And this isn't a discredit to any of the amazing healthcare professionals that dedicate their lives to help healing these mental wounds, but there's some wounds that are deeper. They're more of a soul wound that is hard to address with conventional medicine or psychotherapy.
So how does the community help? Is there any way we can help our veterans?
The beauty of Labyrinth and the beauty of the Honor Walk is by just standing there with our veterans and our first responders, is you're already helping. And I see myself now as part of the community as much as well as a veteran, because as I see my friends and the people that I know walk, I stand there and we say, "We will witness your life." And the beauty of the Labyrinth is it allows for that spontaneous transference of that burden, and that as the community hears the story and the community embraces that story, then that veteran or that first responder is able to feel like they can be themselves and unburden themselves with the community's presence there.
What message do you want to share with other servicemen or families or first responders who might be watching us today?
I would say that it doesn't matter how heavy you think your burden is. It doesn't matter how deeply ingrained you think it is. Our story is our story, and it's our responsibility to allow the community to share that burden with each other. I've buried friends that have killed themselves after coming back. I've buried friends that were killed overseas. And these are deep, deep, deep weights and wounds. And allow yourselves just a small piece of vulnerability to say that maybe I can find the courage to put down this weight. And I think that with our event that's going to be going on, the Honor Walk, in that space, you may be able to find courage from the community around you to help you maybe look at the option of maybe putting that down.
Can you speak to the PSTD and the suicides, because it's phenomenal? I mean, it's quite a bit going on.
The PTSD.
Yes.
PTSD and moral injury and suicide right now is, if you don't mind, I just want to address that from a professional psychological perspective and clinical perspective, because I think it's important.
Okay.
We don't view, from our modality, we do not, from the Turning Point modality, we do not view veterans as liabilities. We do not view military people who've experienced what they have experienced as liabilities. We see them as the future leaders of this nation. And the reason that I want to say that is sometimes people look at veterans and active duty military, even though we have requested of them what they have given.
Yes.
Even though we have asked of them some of the things that have caused them moral injury, we oftentimes don't know how to absorb them back into our society. And our viewpoint from Turning Point is that we don't want to absorb them back into our society. We want to welcome them home as leaders. We want to welcome them home with the breadth of their experience, their sacrifice, and the leadership that was forged through suffering and sacrifice and the flames of war back into American society as our leaders, healed and restored, and really old souls in young bodies. So even though the Diagnostic Statistical Manual will tell you that PTSD, moral injury, and TBI are mental illnesses, we instead like to look at that from a different perspective, and it's our experience, and our veterans have taught us this, that in fact they are simply initiating and moving their experiences of war into another framework that we need desperately, and it's the framework in a society that is often void of character, a society that's often void of sacrifice, a society that is often void of empowering leadership. And so we have all of these young leaders coming back to us that we can absorb and really understand that they have something to teach us as a society because of the fires and the experience of war that they have gone through. They come back and then lead us to a much more promising future because these young men and women have experienced things that we have not, and we have asked them to experience things for us that we have not. They come back ennobled when we just give them a little bit of a process toward healing. They become ennobled leaders that lead us into a new future. And so the honor walk is sort of that pass-through piece that helps us understand these are our champions and that they can empower us to see and act in new and different ways if we'll only give them a voice and a chance to exhibit their leadership among us. So instead of seeing them as liabilities, instead we see them as absolute exemplars of where we want to be and want to go if we just honor where they are, help them sort of translate and initiate their experience into leadership instead of putting them in the corner and not looking at them except as broken people. Because that's truly not who they are. It's a part of their experience, but that's only because they need a little space and a little parameters to move it into a leadership strength.
And with this labyrinth walk, helps to heal that.
Absolutely, and there are counselors standing by and people from still serving veterans that will help them with employment issues, that will help their families with issues. It all works together. This event is simply a way to introduce them to a modality that moves them into their true strength.
So we honor, we celebrate, and we remember.
Yes, we honor, we celebrate, we remember.
Wonderful. Joshua, thank you so much for your time, for your service and all that you've done. And thank you for continuing to help others.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And of course, I'm giving you a new name, Reverend Kerry Joffrion, thank you for all that you do in this community. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Brenda.
We're excited about the upcoming activity.
Yes, September 12th, 2 to 5. See you there. Free admission at U.S. Space and Rocket Center if you pre-register rocketcenter.com/honor walk.
How about that? Okay. And as we close, let's take a look at last year's honor walk. Thanks for joining us today.